Okay, it's going.
What do goat, sheep, and buffalo have in common? Their fur is a material that is used to make yarn that has been used for centuries to knit our clothing. Knitting is an age-old craft that has been a necessity in our history. In our early history, every member of the household was involved in the process of making the yarn that would produce some needed piece of clothing for a member of the family. These were not luxuries, but necessities. There are many laborious steps to get the fur to the yarn and the needles for the garments. You must shear the animal, and then you clean the fur and card it. That is to comb it to make it soft and pliable. Early settlers had a spinning wheel in their household furnishing. To spin the yarn takes practice and is not an easy task. When the yarn is ready to be knitted, there have been many items used to knit with throughout the years. Tree branches, animal tusks, certain rocks, aluminum, and then the modern knitting machine that was invented in the 20th century. Scarves, gloves, socks, and hats are just a few of the items considered craft items made by hand today. With the modern knitting machines, these same items are made, but also are suits, vests, sweaters that are quite expensive depending on the yarn used. Yarn is manufactured today with the rayon, nylon, cotton, and many other creative types of threads and fabric. Yarn is no longer done on the spinning wheel, except the most purest of master knitters. The most effective way in the modern age that knitters used had always been in the war effort. On the home front during World War II, knitting to help the war effort and to keep American soldiers warm was a major preoccupation of Americans, particularly women. The November 2004 1941 cover story of the popular weekly magazine Life explained how to knit. Along with the basic instructions and a pattern for a simple knitted vest, the article advised, to the great American question, what can I do to help the war effort? The commonest answer yet found is knit. The article pointed out that the hand knitters were turning out garments for soldiers despite the fact that machine knitting was more efficient. Knitting gave people at home a way to help. The article noted that a volunteer group citizen for the Army and Navy were campaigning to get 1 million standard Army sweaters by Christmas. 2 weeks later on, December 7, 1941, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor and America entered World War II. At home, more and more Americans picked up their needles to knit socks, mufflers, and sweaters to keep American soldiers warm. The First Lady of Knitting was given the name given to the first Eleanor Roosevelt. She was often photographed knitting for the war effort, or at least carrying her voluminous knitting bag, that many women in America copied so they could too be seen as helping. In the United States, many women and men were called on to knit things that were not thought about. Inside of helmets, bandages for the Red Cross. There were catchy names for certain groups. The Red Cross is at his side, and the Red Cross is you. The Navy needs men, but it also needs knitters. Knitting for Victory, Pearl Harbor, Holy Socks, a name given to the needed socks, was so greatly captured that American soldiers held prisoner in Germany sometimes unraveled their American Red Cross provided sweaters and re-knitted the yarn into socks themselves using straightened, pointed barbed wire as improvised needles. Red Cross knitting continued undebated throughout the war. A homespun production line that stretched from house to house and from Seattle to the soldiers fighting overseas. With wools and needles, Washington knitters did what they could. Knitting their bit for victory, their handiwork was destined to warm and protect, and fated to suffer were the soldiers. Knitters held the knowledge that their carefully crafted socks and sweaters might be a part of a soldier's final garments, and end with them, bloodstained and far from home. Many knitters now doing knitting caps for preemies at the hospitals. There is a big effort now for a thin material that is made from plastics that wick the sweat away from the prosthetic stumps before the artificial limb is applied. These are hard to size, and to manufacture them is almost impossible to get a perfect fit. Knitting is now considered the most therapeutic craft that can be done. In rehab for many drug users, it is a useful tool that keeps their hands busy and their minds focused. For returning soldiers that have an arm and hand injuries, knitting is being called upon for the practice effort that will stimulate blood flow and nerve and muscle activity. Artificial limbs are being tested using knitting needles as preferred object to test for how sensitive the touch of artificial fingers can be. So its necessity to need, from ancient Egypt to modern worldwide use, knitting is never going to be something that will lost to the world. Every day, more and more uses for the hand knitting is being found. And these are my visual aids: a scarf, yarn, and needle.